My name's Shellebrate. I'm an oceanographer at the University of Maine, and I'm based at the Darling Marine Center. Maine has always been a really great place to grow shellfish. We have really clean, pristine waters. There's not a whole lot of population density, not a lot of people in one spot, and that helps keep the waters clean because you don't have a lot of nutrients coming in from land, whether that's from large farming or wastewater. And so our waters tend to be really clean, and so the shellfish grow really well and they're really healthy here. And over time, as water conditions, the temperature and how salty it is have changed, different species have thrived at different points. And the really cool thing about the Maine coast is it's so varied. There's so many different rivers and bays that they all have different conditions. And so you can kind of pick your spots based on what species you want to grow. Different species have different temperature preferences. So just like people, some people like it in cold places up in the north, and some people like tropical places. Different species also have preferences. Bivalve farming is really sustainable. It has really low inputs, meaning that we don't supply food for it. They just eat the phytoplankton that's naturally in the water. We don't need to give it fresh water as a plant on land would need. So if you are growing a cow, you need to grow the food, the plants that are going to be fed to the cow, which is going to take nutrients and water, and then also take care of the cow while it is growing. And the benefit of bivalve farming is that you're not doing any of that. You're putting these animals in the water, and you have to care for them in terms of keeping the cages clean and whatnot, and making sure that they are the right size and graded, but you don't have other processes going into it. And so that creates a really sustainable product that's good for the earth. So shellfish in general are a really great option as a source of protein.
Aquaculture has a lot of good environmental impacts. They filter feed, they help with water quality, they create habitat for other species. Something that impacts bivalves or any shell-growing organism is ocean acidification. So acidification happens when the pH gets low. You're lowering the pH of the ocean. The way that that is happening is because carbon dioxide is essentially seeping into the ocean from the atmosphere. And when carbon dioxide seeps into the ocean, that actually decreases the pH of the ocean, which increases its acidity. The more acidic it gets, the lower that pH goes, the harder it is for scallops, clams, mussels, oysters to build their shell. So their shells end up being thinner and not as strong, and that has impacts for protecting them if they're in the wild from predators. The thinner your shell is, the easier it is going to be for something to eat you. And that's really important when you think about an impact on natural populations of organisms as well as organisms grown in aquaculture. We really rely on each other. You know, an aquaculturist relies on the ocean. If you're thinking about how to make it sustainable for the organism to persist, you're then automatically thinking about how to make it sustainable for the industry that relies on that organism to persist. So sustainability is really, really linked. It's linked between the animals that we eat, the animals that we harvest, and the people that are doing that harvesting. So if one is not healthy, the other will not be healthy. So I think that continuing to focus on questions that are driven by the ecology of the organism and then how that influences the economy of the human is just really, really, really important.
You want to be friends with the water that you grow in, whether you're growing seaweed or shellfish. And the same is true for other forms of aquaculture as well, because if I was a farmer, and I have a farm on the side, my animals are directly dependent on that water right there. So if that water right there is crummy because of my actions, I'm like putting myself out of business. It doesn't matter if I'm growing kelp or oysters or anything like that. So as a farmer, I have a vested interest in having a healthy, resilient environment in which to work.
As you see, every component basically is plastic on an oyster farm. The mooring balls, the floats, the mesh, the zip ties, the rope. My background is as a microplastics research scientist, and the more I learned, the more I realized that we really needed to think about every single bit of material that we use in the marine environment and in our everyday lives. And it seemed that I was in a place here that I could apply my research to what I was doing and try to reimagine a future without plastics. For the first few years working on plastic-free gear, we were really focused on the single bag because that's what we had out here. But then we realized for scaling it, it made more sense to focus on the ranch culture because a lot of farms use that, and that way we could also build gear that would be interchangeable with the current system out here. So maybe people still have a ranch with plastic pontoons, but then they put cedar bags in it with aluminum mesh. Or as the ranch fails, then they could replace it with a welded aluminum ranch. And that way, rather than trying to reinvent how we grow oysters, just trying to reimagine the materials that we use to do so. This is one of our latest prototypes. As you can see, it's these aluminum pontoons with threaded caps, and then this is a 6-bay ranch. And here we have some plastic gear, and then we also have some mostly plastic-free gear. That's a cedar box with window screen for baby oysters. So the other thing here too is so this is stainless steel clip, and then this is manila rope. So that's natural fiber rope. When this doesn't have the bags in it, I can pick this up on my own, no problem. And so that's the other reason why we went with aluminum. Not only is it endlessly recyclable and repairable, the whole idea is that we'll make it very similar in terms of workability to the traditional plastic gear. I started just with the bag and the floats. And so we played around with metal and wood, and then we grew myco buoys. So buoys made out of mushrooms. This is a full prototype. This is natural rubber bungees, welded aluminum rod. So these are myco buoys or mycelium buoys or mushroom buoys, but really myco buoys is what they're trademarked as. I love the idea of working with mushrooms, and I love the idea of replacing things that use styrofoam in the ocean with mycofoam, with mycelium buoys. Those black plastic floats are often filled with foam. Could we fill that with mycofoam instead? Mooring balls, could we use myco buoys for those for flotation? My whole hope and goal with all of this is that we will make open source blueprints so that if you're an oyster farmer in Australia, you probably aren't going to be using eastern white cedar, but you could use these blueprints and switch it out for materials that make sense for your locale. I think awareness around plastic use and plastic consumption is probably the most proactive thing that you can do, and just being more aware of what materials you're using in your everyday life and what materials things are coming in. So that's one of the driving forces for really trying to figure out an alternative to plastics in our food systems and also in our marine environment, and just seeing what that could look like longer term.
I think sustainability means a lot of different things. A lot of food can be provided by aquaculture, so it is potentially a really important and unique sustainable food source. We can get a lot of product out of a farm, and that can provide a lot of food. I think we just have to think really strategically and really keep that sustainability in mind as aquaculture continues to grow and as we continue to require more from the environment in order to support aquaculture practices.
What gives me hope for the future of sea farming is all of the people that are involved and the people who are passionate about being stewards for the waters that they're relying on for their livelihood. In Maine, we have such an opportunity to be able to connect with real people who are growing our food.
I like to think that as communication continues to grow and we continue to craft more messages about the oceans, the importance of oceans, to not only making the world go round, but also providing food for us, that increases the sense of responsibility that consumers feel for choosing their food, specifically their seafood, wisely.